which is a closer look at the innovation and enterprise section. And as we do that, it is incumbent upon me to introduce the chair of our next session, who is Professor Charles Mbowa. You heard from him before. He is, in fact, the UZ University of Zimbabwe Pro Vice Chancellor, who also has an additional portfolio to his responsibilities, which looks after the industrialization and management of the UZ's strategic partnerships. So we say good morning to you, Mr. Mbowa. Great to have you with us this morning. Other than that, he will be supported by Mr. Ruzizo, who is the immediate past president of Confederation of Zimbabwe Industries. Good to have you here with us, sir. Thank you. And likewise, a young man with lots of talent and going places clearly. This is Pritchard. Pritchard is running an organization called Abiedu Keen. I'm rather eager to understand what that means, but I'll leave you to explain that. It's Pritchard Marco, and he's one of the panel. So good morning to you, Pritchard. Great to have you with us. Right. And I will hand over to you. Right, so what I will do is hand over to our main speaker for the session, who is Professor Mbowa, even though that our moderator is in fact Mr. Ruzizo, who will come in after the presentation. So allow me, if you will, to hand over to Professor Mbowa and give him a round of applause. Thank you, Professor.
I'm tempted to say good afternoon, but it's still a good morning. Allow me to write on all the protocols already observed. Recognize that Honorable Minister Sekai Nzenza is with us, and Dr. Mike Bima. I was saying to him that when we were students at the University of Zimbabwe, he was our president, so he remains our leader. Thank you. I think the projection, I assume, is coming on. I introduced myself as a pseudo-professor because I think after writing about 10 books and close to 900 articles, I realized that I had not contributed at home, and in a way I was not relevant. So that was a challenge for me. But the call for Education 5.0, that obviously derived from His Excellency, our President, when he challenged universities to produce products, goods, and services, or assist in that process, resulted in the what we call Education 5.0 with the Minister of Higher and Tertiary Education, Innovation, Science, and Technology Development. I think we can move on to the presentation. Essentially, the number of elements that include research. I always say we need to demystify some of these terms because for me, research is search and search and search and search and search and search again. So as long as you are searching, you are researching. Yeah. So it's not something that you do at university, and everybody can do it. Business can do that. In terms of teaching, obviously, we're using research as the main base. I didn't want to say Kenneth Kaunda, but that means that has been coined by our Vice Chancellor at the University of Zimbabwe, where we say kuziva, kugona, nekuita is what we want our students to do. Obviously, when I was a student, I had so many job offers as a first-year student, and that's not the case anymore. So obviously, you know, the kind of cadre or student graduate that you want to produce is to look at innovation that covers products, goods, and services development, and commercialization. Definition of innovation, I had to go to the English dictionary because I speak Shona, at times Shangwe, at times Korekore, and Debele. Essentially, it's just change, alteration, upheaval, metamorphosis, restructuring, rearranging, recasting, restyling, putting a variation. So again, we need to demystify what innovation is. If you change something slightly, and that's what the Japanese have done, copy and improve over time. Unfortunately, I did my PhD there, so I might mention them now and again. I looked at their history of technology transfer and so forth. Any new method, new idea is what we call innovation. And obviously, the fourth pillar or mission is community outreach, where we are looking at strategic long-term partnership. I always say we're looking at marriages that have forgotten to include a divorce clause. So it's long-term, forever partnership with industry. And all we are calling is to say, industry, please embrace that. I know we ask difficult questions. At times we don't have the industrial experience. At times we appear childish. But I think in terms of you as giving us a menu of your problems through research contracts, looking at how we can have joint activities, would go a long way in terms of that new mission. Finally, industrialization, that's often misunderstood on the next slide, where we are saying, our students must be taught to start new businesses, must be taught to enable businesses that exist to improve based on research results so that we satisfy human needs. So again, I looked at the industrialization dictionary definition, which looks at development of industries on a region or wide scale. So for me, if a hotel group in America has 10,000 hotel facilities all over the world, that's hotel industrialization, something on a wide scale. So you're looking at something not in Bulawayo or in Harare only, but something that extends to the rural, call it rural industrialization, leading to more open urbanization. So Education 5.0 delivers products, goods, and services aligned to Vision 2030, National Development Strategy 1, and the government priority programs. If you can move on to the end of that slide, and then on to the next, where we're looking at the Ministry of Higher Education, Technology, obviously, is the parent ministry of most academia. They tend to have a doctrine, they have a strategic plan, the Minister's Action Plan. And for University of Zimbabwe, we have a University of Zimbabwe strategic plan, where we look at strategic partnerships for knowledge development. As I mentioned, kuziwa kugona kuita. We're looking at not only, it's not like we're coming to give to industry, we're coming to learn how to do. And that can help in terms of sharing, resource mobilization, investment, outreach, and business development. We're looking at formalization of local international partnerships, in which case, that can also link to industrial international partnerships through formal arrangements, where we look at NDAs, non-disclosure and confidentiality agreements, memorandum of understanding agreements, and so forth. So we are looking at update of existing industry and development of new business enterprises is a dream that academia can also take part in. Can we learn from the Asian experience? They've generally used a 5-stage model that looks at successful technology transfer, industrialization, adaptation, diffusion, and indigenization of technology to improve lives. The first one is operation. If you buy a fleet of buses or trucks and you employ people from Ngomahuru to drive those buses, you might as well have not done any business investment. So it's just to say, just the training of an operator, whether it's machinery or equipment, is most critical and important. It's technology in its own, and that tends to be maybe the first pillar of technology transfer. The second one, obviously, is maintenance and repair, where you look at independence. in maintenance. So in other words, if you are buying in technology and then you want the supplier to come and maintain all the time, you haven't done your bit as industry from our look as academia, to say that you need to get independence of maintenance and operation. And then the third level, obviously, you move on to incremental minor repair and improvement, which then more towards indigenization and self-reliance. In other words, if you can replace a component. And here I can mention, if you look at the Chinese model, they have so many multi-billion US dollar industry for buses, for example, and their engines are from Cummins in the USA. So it doesn't stop them being billionaires by taking different components from everywhere and putting them together, but also then adding in terms of the structure of the bus or whatever product you're looking at. So you're looking at those incremental improvements, major design changes, which then can result in the case of Japanese, I think they said, well, they're making the Mercedes-Benz, let's make a smaller car, cheaper car, and so forth, more reliable and efficient. Domestic manufacturing, where you now can completely almost localize everything, and like in the Chinese buses, what I'm saying is you don't have to make 100% everything. If Bosch is good at alternators and starter motors, why should you design a starter motor? Alternator. When the Japanese, we have been at it for a long time, just are using Mitsubishi and Bosch from Germany, Mitsubishi from Japan. So again, one has to be strategic in terms of what niche technologies and areas one needs to look at. The critical aims of innovation, successful innovation, obviously, you need materials, natural heritage materials. So you must niche yourself to say, what resources do we have, and then, what industrial areas do you want to develop? What technical skills, whatever you have. So you must have a mass of those things, manpower, M3, machinery. Some people just look at the quality of clothes from Paris, from Italy, shoes, and so forth. They not realize maybe that they're using 150 different types of machinery to achieve that quality. For the same activity of sewing and whatever you do, stitching and whatever you call it. So I think is that diversity of knowing, what machinery, manpower, management, obviously, without the brains, nothing works. And you can have a very nice product and no market for it. You develop the market like Steve Jobs, who says, no, they will do technology and they'll make people like their technology. That can be one way. But obviously, whatever happens, you need a market, whether you develop it or it exists. And as long as you are importing 2,000 different items, there is a market. And it's a matter of then looking at, what technology variations. So in terms of this, I think we need also to demystify the need for originality. The next slide shows you the historical aspects in terms of import and exports of technology in Japan. 1955, you are starting off, you are importing, 100 times. So importing technology means buying machinery, plant and equipment, what the auction floor is trying to do in terms of plant and machinery, raw materials, and so forth. So you're importing certain things that you don't have the technology to do. And so over time, in this case, it took them, close to, 30 years or 25 years or more close to 25 years to actually having substantial exports of technology, where you say this is Zimbabwean technology, we're exporting it to another country. So all we are saying is there's nothing wrong with buying technology. And obviously you can then they looked at their own culture to say we need soy sauce, we need rice wine, sake, which can make you drunk and go to heaven in one day. Traditional foods, steel production, it took them 40 years to get where they are. I've looked at a case study of that where at one time they used to use horse-drawn carts to develop their own technology because the German technology did not work for them. You try to to produce glass, it doesn't work. Then you experiment on it until you can produce your glass. It's happened maybe in Padoma at one time. Research and technology expenditure, up to 3% of GDP And obviously, you're looking at how that can be. Minister Mtuli can assist in terms of improving that. And research and development can be by industry, joint with government, by government, universities doing it for industry and so forth. It can be anything. Then restricting imports, protective measures, obviously those come into play. And we are saying, can we learn from the Japanese experience? On next slide, I looked at then trading the academic industry interface, where I'm saying that, one way would be through contract research. What I said is, not like give me all your problems and we'll try to deal with it, but we're saying give us a menu of different problems and see what we can practically do together in terms of our interface and interrelationships towards that. Obviously, when I outsource research and development, you're saying, oh, I'm letting out my secrets. We have agreements around that. But there are certain advantages. You can have a research and development complement of 100 people who need their pensions, they have their unions, who need a lot of things. And at times when you don't need that really in-house, academia can assist to, temporarily or for whatever time you want, assist with that research and development. Intellectual property code development can be another way. You're looking at trademarks, patents, trade secrets, copyrights, etc. You're looking at intellectual property licensing, trade, joint venture startups with academia, industry, with government. You're looking at strong alumni. I mean, University of Zimbabwe is more than 90,000 alumni, or at least graduates who have gone through it. Some might have passed on, but it's a sizable number in terms of working with those towards industrialization and innovation. So we're looking at symbiotic and synergistic win-win relationships, partnerships for the long term between academia and industry, also between academia and government in tripartite or whatever arrangements one would call that. Focusing on the different gaps where you can adopt indigenized technology. I again pick on those models that I discussed for the Asians. And the new products that we have forgotten about, I see quite a lot of them coming back with the local restaurants, Maheu, Chimera, Rupiza, Maputi, and all that. Ruraza for cooking and a lot of healthy foodstuffs that we can also export to the world. I remember on that when I first went to Japan, I was asked to play Zimbabwean music. Then I thought of Ondoe Makandiwa, Thomas Mapfumo, and then the Japanese guy looked at me, danced and smiled, and said, sounds like Bob Marley. So when a Japanese, they're very indirect, one took a Shakawanda. So So then I had to really go to Rio Mkanya and Oliver Mtukuzi to really appease them. Then they said, that's new, after a lot of sweating. So I'm just saying one needs to export something that is original and Zimbabwean to others. Assisting to improve the stature of the different people in the industry can help in that. Supporting student projects so that they deliver on the mandate. Technology transfer, prioritizing listed imports, supported projects, and so forth. So we were just saying there's a variety of things that we can look on. And I don't want to belabor this slide. I'll move on to the next one. Intersection between academia and policymakers. Obviously, co-develop research so that they affect innovative evidence-based policies. So it would be nice to say, government, local government, province, whoever, rural district council, they've developed a policy that is actually based on collaboration with academics and informed by industry, commerce and industry, and so forth. So we were just saying that there's a lot of scope there. Original African innovation, industrialization. I always say if you apply economic theory to challenges in Zimbabwe, you'll be wasting time, because that theory was not developed for the mindset and the stature and the structural realities of the Zimbabwean economy. You know, Ubuntu systems and management might be one. Identification of relevant smart settlements that talk to Zimbabwe, and we say charachimwe achitsvani inda. That whenever you team together, and if you want to go further, you go with others. I mean, the Americans, the Chinese say, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first step. So we're saying, let's start these relationships, academia, industry, policymakers, so that we start the journey. We can co-develop frameworks, the methodologies, and work together towards the realization of NDS1 in Vision 2030. Particularly, the issue of import substitution keeps on coming in terms of how you can navigate that territory. Trade comes into play. How do you improve trade or maximize on trade? So I think the synergies for collaboration are wide, many. But I think on the last slide there, I wanted to emphasize the development of capacity, skills, think tanks. We always assume universities know a lot, and I always call myself a pseudo professor because every day I'm learning, and a lot can be learned from industry. So I think that deliberate action by government, by industry to develop think tanks, skills and capacity that can inform our trajectory. That's why I deliberately asked about the foreign currency conundrum to say, why is foreign currency so special in Zimbabwe? One time I told somebody that, given the way the bailing out of companies that have misbehaved happens in the States, you can actually print $20 billion and buy all the land in Zimbabwe. So what's currency and what's value? What's land? What's mineral? What's whatever? And I also say that if 200 ago you tried to buy land in Saudi Arabia to the cheapest maybe land available, is it that cheap when you look at the oil sector and what has happened to Dubai and that region? So money value, US dollar is a green piece of paper, I would say, but that's a mindset shift that one is talking about. I won't go into details on that. I'll just, I don't want to bore you because the professors can talk until sunset or even sunrise. The times for a week. Concluding remarks, I suggest that business leaders work with academia and government so that they also graduate from being managers of other people's businesses to owners of fast-growing industries, businesses, enterprises that belong to them, that belong to the country, that have a nation at the heart. That's what the Japanese have done and they've made it. The Chinese have done the same thing, they've made it. Koreans have done the same thing and they've made it. We cannot develop based on a colonial mentality. I'm every day trying to decolonize my mind, my education. That is throw away that education that I got until I was a professor, that fights against me, that militates against me and my people, and that advances Zimbabwean people in their variety, different cultures, different whatever races and so forth, into a successful nation. You need continued government and industrial support to academia, obviously, to deliver results, and that has been quite a lot coming. What I'm saying is that it would be nice if different ministries engage with government, with the academia as they develop policy. I know we're crazy at times, very proud, and at times pompous, at times, but in the process, you might find some hidden diamonds that just need polishing and can contribute to policy and to think tanks that can help the country. Two main questions I think academia should always pose. How can academia assist industry to achieve their own and national objectives. That's the second thing, point of engagement. I'm in charge of strategic partnerships and industrialization, something that has been created in West Zimbabwe, and I think those are the questions. The second question is how can academia assist in, how can industry help academia to capacitate academia so that they can add value and assist industry. So I'm saying the industry must be selfish, whatever the academia is doing, the government must be selfish, whatever academia is doing, in the end is to assist them. So whenever we're assisting and capacitating and skilling them, the main end is that they should give back to industry, give back to government, give back to the country. Hakuna nofurira imwe. So each CONGRESS is, I got the spelling wrong for itself. That's a traditional saying, Shona saying. No matter, calves born from the same cow. I always say that, brothers and sisters, you can't send your brother's sister's child to a better school than where you are sending your child. So if siblings can't do that, I don't think America or China or Serbia or whatever would prioritize Zimbabwe over themselves. I can copy this one. You can work on even while so your neighbor cannot solve your problems. They cannot build your household. So industry, government, academia are critical ingredients. And finally, just to say, I don't want to copy Barack Obama. If you can move but together we will. And I think we are the people that we are waiting for. I think the second dispensation has created a lot of dialogue and openness. That is the right time. We're at the cusp of making excellent history and future in Zimbabwe. Some might be blind to it. Like diamonds, we polish each other until we get there. Thank you very much. I might sound political or mechanical. I'm a mechanical engineer, basically, who has worked in the railways. So when they talked about the railways, I was there since I was in second year of university, and then worked another 5 years in the railway sector. So I get excited about that mode of transportation. So you have to shut me up. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor. I think you all agree with me, Honorable Minister, for the protocol. Professor is not a pseudo-professor, he's the real deal. A lot of profound words are said by the professor. I will not attempt to summarize a lot of the wisdom that is given us. He went through the journey of education 5.0 that some of us may not have been very familiar with. He also took us on a journey to learn about what the Asian tigers, how they've approached, the issues of industrialization and development of their economies. He went on to tell us about the possible collaboration between industry and the academia. I think we are participating in some of the academic boards at some of our universities, and we take on students, most of us, on attachment from the various universities. Maybe I will, after the next speaker speaks, I will then make more incisive comments from industry presentations. He talked about homegrown solutions for industrialization, the need for business to work with academia, and also the need for academia to work with policymakers to improve our policy environment, and also the need for government support for academia. And I think closer to our hearts is the need for academia to assist industry to achieve its objectives. I think very profound conclusions that we heard from the professor. So thank you very much, Professor. We will go into discussions after the next presenter is presented.
Thank you so much. I would like to acknowledge our Honorable Minister. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to CZI to be able to speak. I'm going to align my talk briefly, though, with Professor Mbowa's conversation. Maybe let me introduce myself before I go into my talk. My name is Richard Marco. I'm an entrepreneur, and I help entrepreneurs and startups develop concrete actionable strategies for better access to markets and finance. And I mentioned startups primarily because startups are entities that help economies reinvent themselves. And at the University of Zimbabwe, where Professor is, we have been engaging with some of their startups. And what I can tell you is that the stuff that is happening at some of these hubs that have been introduced is amazing. But the missing link is that it's disconnected from industry. We've got these brilliant young people who are coming up with solutions for industries for which they have no complete understanding over. There's no connection between the academia at present and industry. So you get all of these solutions that have no product market fit. They're designed, they spend a lot of time, but they're not interacting with the end users, and in this case, industry. And I talk about industry in this context because industry in Zimbabwe, we've had a lot of talk around reviving industry. And I love reviving industry, but I think it falls short of the modern realities that we are experiencing. Because reviving industry speaks to nostalgia. It speaks to where we've been. So when we talk about reviving industry, we are talking about reviving something that used to be. And I want to be honest with all of you that where we used to be is probably dead. Half of it is probably dead. We've got to start thinking in terms of where we want to go. And to think in terms of where we want to go, we've got to start thinking in terms of innovation, as Professor has indicated. And innovation is as simple as, what can I eliminate? What can I reduce? What can I raise? What can I create? And as businesses begin to answer those questions in terms of what they can eliminate, raise, reduce, or create, then they're innovating. And I think we've done a disservice to ourselves because we've been paying lip service to innovation. And also we've been looking at innovation from the wrong end. So I know a lot of businesses right now, you've got your social media, you've got your website, and you're looking at that as innovation. But I can tell you that the innovation that we require to leapfrog, because we want to leapfrog, what is happening elsewhere. The innovation that we require to leapfrog what is happening elsewhere is already being made at the UZ by the young guys who are at the UZ at these hubs. But they're making it blindly, and there's no connection with a real industry. And I know some of your industries, you look at them and you say, what can we innovate? But there's a great deal that you can actually innovate and transform and renew and change. If you look at the modern world, maybe let me not say the modern world. If you look at the global north in particular, they've managed to reinvent themselves through entrepreneurs and innovators. And they are not doing so by competing with entrepreneurs and innovators. I'm talking about competing with innovators and entrepreneurs because most of the times when young people walk into your offices and they bring up a new idea, you ask them two questions. One, where has this been done before? And where has this been done before is not only the question that you're asking to new entrepreneurs who are pitching to you. It's a question that you are also asking to your own entrepreneurs who are entrepreneurs within enterprises. You're asking them, where has this been done before? And because you're asking them where this has been done before, you are making it difficult for them to justify a new trajectory. I think through entrepreneurship and innovation, we've got an opportunity to create and widen the market opportunity that exists. Reviving industry speaks to an old opportunity, which may no longer be relevant to the modern realities. So what am I saying here? I'm simply saying that we've got to rethink the way we approach innovation and entrepreneurship. I'm simply saying we've got to rethink how we are approaching institutions of higher learning. If I ask in this room, there are probably 100 of us business leaders, when last were you at a university to speak to entrepreneurs, to speak to students, to engage with them, to find out where they are, to also feed into these institutions of higher learning the kind of expectations we have. So we are a society in Zimbabwe where everyone has got their own expectation. Industry has got its own expectation. Academia has got its own expectation. Government has got its own expectation. And there's no common ground where our expectations are converging. And for as long as our expectations are not converging, we're not going to build the future of the industry we deserve. And the future of the industry we deserve, especially ahead of AFCFTA, is one that's competitive. It's one that's forward-thinking. It's one that's built upon collaboration. It's one that's creating new market opportunities for things that are there now and things that are not there. So to be able to achieve all of this, there is a strong need for collaboration. But we've got to go beyond lip service, where we come here, we talk, and then we go back to our corners and continue with business as usual. I can tell you that if we continue with business as usual, AFCFTA is coming. And I've seen what's happening in Zambia. And I've seen what's happening in Uganda. And I've seen what's happening elsewhere. And I've seen the interest that is building, in the global north because of AFCFTA. The realization is that intra-Africa trade is going to expand. And as intra-Africa trade expands, if you're outside Africa, you're going to be left out. So there are entrepreneurs outside Africa who are eyeing Africa right now as an opportunity to scale and grow. But these entrepreneurs are outside Africa, so they lack context. And that context is what we have here in Zimbabwe. But for as long as we're operating in our own little silos, and for as long as our interpretation of innovation and entrepreneurship is skewed, we're not going to benefit from the solutions that we have. We're also going to continue exporting talent. I advise a couple of startups, some of whom have gone to raise money. One of the startups that I've advised is a startup called Value Chain Farming Africa that went on to raise $35 million in Botswana. They were here in Zimbabwe, but they left. So we've got to start thinking around how do we create collaborations that are meaningful for industry, for academia, for everyone else. And this is the startup ecosystem. This is the entrepreneurship ecosystem that we are looking for. And I hear a lot of times when you talk about entrepreneurial ecosystem, we look at it as someone else. The entrepreneurial ecosystem is us. It's industry giving new startups a chance. It's industry giving new ideas a chance. It's academia making sure that when these hubs that have been recently established under the Second Republic are running, when these hubs are running, they're not running in isolation of what is happening in industry. They're actually speaking hand in glove to the needs of industry. So I wanted to comment on that, in particular, just to weigh in on what Prof was saying. So in concluding, I'm just going to say that the opportunity to reinvent is there. And if we don't reinvent, we'll continue importing things that we must export. And we'll continue exporting our talent. We'll continue exporting, things that we used to export, 20 years ago, when in actual fact, we must be building new industries and a new trajectory. And the only way to 10x, the only way to grow beyond where we are now is to incorporate innovation, to incorporate entrepreneurs. And I'm not talking about entrepreneurs who are coming from outside, entrepreneurs who are even operating within the establishment. These are your entrepreneurs. And then entrepreneurs who are outside. And I'll leave this podium with just one message to say, there are two voices that are going to matter going forward for business. No matter how much maybe government support one gets, there are two voices that are going to matter. It's the voice of the customer and there's the voice of the entrepreneur. The voice of the customer, because they're telling you where you need to go. And if you don't listen, your neighbors in South Africa who are heavily investing in innovation and entrepreneurship, are coming after you. It's the voice of the entrepreneur, because he's going to show you where you need to go, where you've never been. And that entrepreneur, you've got a unique opportunity to access some of them through some of the university hubs that are being established. So I think I'll not take up much more of your time. I think I'll leave the podium for now. Thank you.
Another round of applause for Richard. Very passionate presentation on issues that clearly are very close to his heart. He talked about the disconnect between academia and industry. The innovation hubs are producing a lot of good work, but the connection between the good work and what is needed or what is wanted by industry is not clearly apparent. And he is calling for a rethinking approach to the way industry interacts with the tertiary institutions. The silos are obviously discouraged and they are an impediment to our development. He pointed out the danger that AFCFTA poses as other countries, raise. He mentioned an example, Botswana, where a startup from Zimbabwe were able to establish, and yet they couldn't do it here at home. I think these are big questions for the policymakers, big questions for us in industry. So before we go into the question and answer, I'll just pose also a few observations. Prof, I think, told us definition of innovation. I think my question is, why innovate in the first place? And I believe the answer is to solve problems, to satisfy human needs. So when we go about innovating, which problems are we solving? I had an opportunity to attend the UZ Innovation Week and delivered a speech there and listened to a number of projects that the students were presenting. And quite rightly, as Pritchard observed, the projects were about producing products, about creating new startup companies. But very few of those projects were about solving problems that are in industry, solving problems that are faced by our policymakers. The issue is it the fault of the students, or is the silos that have been mentioned, which we need to break perhaps going forward from today? There clearly are a lot of opportunities. I think Professor mentioned the models that can be employed to deploy innovation, from the universities into industry. I think it hopefully today and going forward, and CZI will probably need to move this forward. We need to actually create platforms where there's more regular interaction between the academic institutions and industry to see how we can work a lot closer together. An opportunity already exists in the students that are placed in our institutions, in our companies, for those students to actually do much more work than just satisfy their degree programs. And I think this is a challenge to academia to see how they can actually maybe not only place the undergrads, but also the postgraduates in industry, so that they begin to work on the problems that we face as industry. I will invite comments from industry. I think let's focus the comments on how we can improve the collaboration between tertiary institutions in industry for mutual benefit. The roving microphones are there for those that would want to contribute. There's a question right at the back. If you can introduce yourself and then make your contribution.
FC Limited. Just two comments, one for Pritchard, maybe just to agree with him. I had an opportunity once, just before maybe the COVID issues, to go to the university where the engineering department, they were holding a competition for the projects that had come through from the different disciplines. And so they were trying to get a winner there. And the projects were brilliant. But we only had about 3 people from industry. I think there was TEL1 and one other organization. I don't remember who it was. And I came out of there thinking, this should have been put on another platform where industrialists should have come in and had these ideas that are coming through. So I kind of agree, and I think we needed to have created a platform, got these guys in, and I think industry would have picked 1 or 2 innovative ideas that they could have used. I also felt that, yes, they were departmentalized because it was for their final year projects, but I felt that if 1 or 2 of those had been put together and then made to work together, would have had even better solutions. So yes, I think we can do more, and I'm sure Professor Mbowa is something that he can take up. I felt that there was an opportunity there. My second contribution, I'm not too sure it's the right forum, but I'll use it, is I've always felt that we can do more in terms of software development. Professor, you were talking of copying and then just adding on or customizing to your specific needs. We pay a lot of money in licenses, software licenses. And when you look at some of those solutions and the brilliant students that you are raising in these universities, the case in point is that guy who went about changing results from a Chinoi University database. I was thinking, this is brilliant. We should harness this guy's idea. So I have always thought that there is a lot that we can do in software development, provide solutions for maintenance management, for production, and for all these other solutions that we can bring in. So I'm thinking it's one area when you do the hubs that you may need to focus on and look at. I think there's lots of scope. If you look at India, I think India has been doing that, scaling down, because when you look at the sizes of our organizations, they are much smaller than maybe the first world. And so they are scaling down those and giving appropriate or solutions to the requirements of industry. Belarus is another one. So those are my 2 comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Bore. We'll take the question at the back.
Thank you very much. My name is Alec Ngube. I am the director of the NAST Innovation Hub. I'm very honored to be able to give my contributions here at the CZI Congress. I think I like what Professor Mbowa spoke about. Education 5.0. It's meant that we change our mindset in terms of not concentrating on theory and doing things practically. It's supposed, our education is actually supposed to lead to innovation, leading to industrialization. But in the quest of doing that, it is important that we have a clearly set out or structured ecosystem for education to play that role of leading to innovation, leading to industrialization. Why I say so? Because Vision 2030 is talking about an upper middle income economy. Ladies and gentlemen, an upper middle income economy is a knowledge economy. And where is the knowledge coming from? It's coming from institutions of higher learning and other research and development institutions we have here in Zimbabwe. I think in this quest, for an upper middle income economy, we need a holistic approach. We don't need a knee-jerk reaction where we do things haphazardly. I think there is need, when Professor Mbowa spoke about engaging policymakers, very critical. Coming from a background of working in a university setup, I have discovered that probably we have a lot of silos, as pointed out by Pritchard there, who made a presentation. It is important that we do away with these silos and work in liaison, in unison, if I can put it that way, towards one goal of building a country, a knowledge-based economy. I think Professor Mbowa also spoke about the issue of intellectual property and technology transfer. Very critical. Most African countries, if not many other developing countries in the world, were exposed when this COVID-19, pandemic, set in. You remember India and South Africa were asking for a waiver on intellectual property rights. And guess what? They were vehemently resisted by the European Union. They were vehemently resisted by the Americans. Why? Because those countries have invested heavily in research and development. So for them, for their pharmaceutical sector, it's a way of making money. And up to now, I haven't heard of any vaccine for COVID which has come from Africa. It's food for thought, ladies and gentlemen, as we thrive towards reaching a knowledge-based economy, which is an upper middle income economy. Zimbabwe, we do have all the resources, but I want to believe that is probably, it's now turning out to be a case in terms of us just looking at those extractive minerals, those raw materials which we produce, and we want to export them as they are. Prof. Mbowa spoke about value addition, very critical. They don't grow coffee beans in Switzerland, but guess what? Nestle is making billions and billions of dollars through the coffee beans grown by African farmers here under very difficult conditions. But what value addition is coming from Africa? Next to nothing. We produce the best tobacco here in Zimbabwe, but who smokes that tobacco? And what are we getting? All those are questions which, as academia, we are asking ourselves to say, look, we produce platinum, we are producing gold, we are producing diamonds, but what is happening? What the final product? We all know of catalytic converters on vehicles. They all rely on the platinum industry, but we're just exporting raw platinum and nothing, no value addition. So we should actually be able to say, as academia, we are able to, do some extensive research and come up with, solutions and export products which will fetch more money than what we are currently doing. It's burning hot out there, the solar industry. Guess what? Germany, a very cold place right now. They are the leading country in the solar industry. Why? But they don't have the sun like we do here. We could be producing even more through value addition, and this takes research and development. So for industry to really make it, we need to work together and then try and see how we can best come up with products which can compete. I heard some people talking about the African Free Continental Trade Area. It's food for thought again, because their competition is going to come and people will find products coming from all over Africa, flooding the Zimbabwean market, and in the process closing down some industries here, which will not be competitive. So it's a food for thought for industry as well to quickly work with the universities in coming up with products which can withstand the pressure as well as penetrate other markets. There's
Sorry, Mr. Ncube, I think we need to give others opportunity also if we can wind down.
Let me just wind up. And then I want to talk about knowledge-based policy making or evidence-based policy making. Very critical. We cannot reinvent the wheel. We cannot reinvent the wheel. We should be able to look at what others did, where they went wrong, and then avoid those pitfalls so that as a country we can move together. In speed, there's an advantage of being a late comer. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Obviously, very passionate as the man in charge of the Innovation Hub. Can we have another contribution? At the back there.
Thank you so much. I think it's time for probably recommendations that go directly to the ministry, since we have got government officials. My name is Victor from CZI. One of, I think, the challenges that are there, especially on innovation, is the issue of funding. I'm sure lately, Institute of Technology came up with the ventilator, and part of the challenges that they have is that they do not have funding. So the recommendation is for us to improve, especially on the intersection between academia and industry, there's need for funding. And obviously, where should the funding go to? I'm sure the government has got actually that particular portion of innovation, the budget for innovation, and that should go directly to these innovations. And once the innovations are there, the government would now say, for all the industry or the businesses that take up this particular innovation, there is a tax break. I think that is the first point where we need to start. We need to incentivize local businesses that take up local innovations, especially from universities and learning institutions. That's where it starts. Thank you.
Thank you, Victor. We've Mr. Moyo coming down.
Thank you, President Ruzidzo. Thank you, Prof, for the presentation. This is another issue we've discussed for some time now, collaboration between institutions of higher learning, innovation hubs. I also think that it's an iterative process, because we in business have areas that require innovation. And I don't know how we change that, because I see there ideas to introduce new industries, which is great. That will happen naturally. We've got young people, they've got interesting ideas. But the existing industries also need innovation around whether it be packaging, biodegradable. We are still using these plastics here. This is a hazard waiting to happen, because the amount of bottled water we are producing, we're in the cooking oil industry, we're producing plastic for Africa, literally. So we need innovation also around existing industry problems, so that it's not just about creating new industries, but also solving. A wise man once said, you will be remembered for two things: the problems you solved and the problems you create. So we want to invite institutions of higher learning to also solve some problems that we've got now. Thank you, President.
Thanks, Mr. Moyo. I think we'll do one more, then we'll get responses from our panel. Mr. Chigwada here. Oh, sorry, there's all right, you can go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Shingai Koti. I'm with Access Forex, Head of Sales and Marketing. I'm really glad to go just after Busisa went, because my comment really serves as a sort of answer. When you ask when you say that we need innovation within the industries, my question to every CEO and every managing director in this forum is to say, in which department does are the innovation conversations happening within your companies? I've spent over nearly 20 years working within marketing and communications, and 90% of the companies I've worked with or worked for do not have a space for discussing innovation within their businesses. Some things that they do within the research department, but often there isn't a research department. Sometimes this is left to the marketing department, but the way it is resourced, you will find that there are a lot of companies that think marketing's role is to put our banners at CZI Congress. We've all speak about the marketing piece, and there's a very important piece that is often left out in that conversation. Marketing is not about price, it's not about placement, it's not about promotion. Your competitive advantage in the marketing space is going to be your product, which is your innovation. So if your marketing department is not resourced with a market analyst, someone whose day-to-day job it is to look into the market, to see where the problems are, to see what solutions are, who's not recommending new products to Manco or to Exco or to your board on a monthly basis, you don't have a marketing department. You don't have research and development. So it's more of a challenge to the CEOs or the captains of industry are here to say, make sure that you have a structure within your businesses that is discussing innovation on a daily basis. It has to be a strategic imperative that you've set within the business.
Okay, thank you. Let's just have Mr. Chigwada, then I'll have one more round, then we'll wrap up.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you very much, Chair. My comment is really for the professor on how we can speed up the process of this collaboration, because our experience has been really to do with the process. Last year we started the process of trying to mechanize Fumvudza when it started. We signed an NDA, it went to the legal department, never came back. It eventually came back and we signed an MOU, still with the legal departments, and we haven't started anything. So I think there is need for us to look at that process to say how can we speed it up so that we can be able to collaborate faster. Thank you.
All right, so thank you for the questions. We have one more round after this one. We'll just have a response or two from our panel on relevant questions. Professor.
Yeah, thank you very much for the useful responses and comments. I think Mr. Rujidzo has summed up this issue well. Why innovate? What problems are you trying to sort out? And obviously, the challenge with the silo mentality. I think you realize why I deliberately put the technology transfer model, where I say start with operations, maintenance, and so forth. Now we'll start with what's existing. And as such, I think we would welcome a menu of problems that require solutions. I think later on, somebody also indicated that you have mechanical doing something, electrical doing something, and there's no multidisciplinary approach to some of the innovations. And as long as innovations are solutions focused, I think some of you might read the IBM book on teaching elephants how to dance. It's not the correct title, but that, they had to go for solutions to survive. So I think it's the same thing with innovation. It must be addressing solutions. I think there was the issue of software development discussed, and I think youngsters come up with a lot of apps and applications, and they play around with different programming languages and produce wonders. But the challenge is that the wonders end up being wonders. I can give an example to say we have engaged surveying students to assist to augment water supply from the university farm to the campus. And they actually did the real surveying and the work that adds value to that process. So I think it's taking the students' minds from playing with gadgets and playing with things to playing with problems and solutions. And that requires that, we have a gamut of problems from industry and from commerce and from government that we can work on together in a collaborative environment. I think the NAST was just, Representative Alec Muye was just adding on to the presentation. I'll not comment much on that. The funding aspect is a challenge. Our Vice Chancellor likes to say that good solutions and good ideas attract funding. So while government can fund, industry can also come with projects and contracts and fund. But I think the more you innovate and industrialize, you can reach a point where you can also raise your own funds. I just say that mindful of the valley of death, or death valley, some call it, in innovation, where you can sink billions of dollars and produce nothing that is a product, good or service that actually is commercialized, that realizes a profit. So I, as you do so, I think funding has to be nuanced in terms of its success, but also in terms of innovative ways of raising it towards solutions. Ms. Moyer's comments, I think, were on collaboration as an iterative process, but also I wanted to add and say, when you change things, you start off being an infant, and then you're a toddler, and then you start to your steps to walk and so forth. There will be mistakes made. You might come to the innovation hub at tertiary institutions and get disappointed. But I think as long as the process starts and you tune it, you fine tune it, the right direction will always be right direction. I think there was also mentioned to say industry must actively seek innovation. And I think one way is that engagement with government, engagement with academia, to do so. Speeding up the process of collaboration, I think, is a challenge. Obviously, the new steps, there are different people, there might be special egos and so forth in different institutions. But that, for example, I can give the case of the University of Zimbabwe, that we have a specific template that says if invest also generates IP. Yes, we want it in industry and we want it to be used by the nation. But if it can also assist to fund the university in terms of raising funds, and the industry is allergic to that, then you have a problem. So obviously, then the structuring of the agreements might take long, in the sense that it's ndikwenye ugo ndikwenya, or it's ndikwenye urambo ndikwenya. So there is no reciprocation. Reciprocity, I think, makes the agreements very easy. But and so forth, just to use an institution, maybe it can be a challenge. But I think that said, the bureaucracy around it needs to be streamlined, and the institutions must create standard operating processes to address that. And that's critical, because then, the whole process will be defeated. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prof. Let's make a comment. Not take another round of questions. All right, we will have our second round of questions, and then we will attempt to, map a way forward. We will start with the Honorable Minister, who had a hand raised. I'll be a very bad teacher because I only see those at the back.
Thank you, Director of Ceremonies. I want to thank the Professor for a very profound presentation, and also Richard Marco. Very challenging what you presented to us. To the Professor, you on your last slide, you posed some questions. So I think that perhaps we could just throw one back at yourselves. The question was, how does academia assist industry to achieve own national objectives? I don't have an answer, but I think this is where the gap is. between industry, government, and academia. So I think this is the space that needs to be interrogated, but I don't know how. Then to Pritchard, I totally agree with you when you say we keep looking to the past. But where I somewhat differ with you is when it comes to lessons that can be learned from the past to help us innovate going forward. Because already we know something didn't work very well, so why repeat it? And picking up on what Abu Sisimoyo said, he was talking about innovation in existing industries. Now, existing industries were there before, and they did brilliantly. We're talking about Zisco Steel, for example. It worked very well, supplying steel in the whole of Southern Africa. But as we revive it, that I'm using the word revive, but it's not going to be what it was. It will have the latest technologies. It's going to move massively to provide downstream and upstream industries, as well as save the region for export and also internationally. So on my thoughts on my 3 points are requiring some further clarification. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. I think certainly on our old industries, I have to agree with you. Professor Ricardo Hausman of Harvard talks about complexity. And I believe our old industries with the new give us the necessary complexity to actually leapfrog. And quite often we hear that the old industries might be allowed to die and we start new things. But that knowledge is actually very important for leapfrogging that we may be desiring. Right, I think the President had a comment. All right, CEO.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to share a couple of points. One is that I can see from the discussions that we need to be deliberate and actually structured in the way that we frame the collaboration between business and academia and also policy in order to drive innovation and our competitiveness. Because I think from the discussions had so far, it's clear that that space needs to be more actively occupied and by all players. But what will it look like? I think we need to be clear in terms of what are we going to do in that space. And thank you, Professor Mbowa, for your submission on standard operating procedures are actually needed in each of the areas that are going to be participating in that space so that we are all able to move forward. I also wanted to share a point. I think one of the drivers of innovation and borrowing from academia, what I've also observed is that some institutions, some companies have now adopted a new structure in their boards where they have an innovation and technology committees in their board structures. And one company actually told me that the chairman of their innovation and technology committee in their board is only about 23 or 24. That's the chairperson of that board. So they are now actively, through their own business model and governance structures, addressing how they can tap into the academia for innovation. One of the challenges that I think really disturbs me is that we are coming up with a lot of innovations that we are exporting. We export the innovations and we export the innovators. I'm aware that we've got some scholarship programs that come and harvest our top projects in various universities and say the students that produce the best projects will offer them a scholarship. But once they are gone, they are gone. And that knowledge is kind of lost to us as an economy. And there's a role that I believe industry can play to make sure that we harness some of that. If we can offer the incentives that other economies are offering, then maybe we can actually be able to save that. And also, I think what Mr. Busisa Moyo has said about old industries requiring innovation, I think that's what we should look at. What innovation is needed in the old and existing industries? And the key there, I believe part of it is around entrepreneurship. And that innovation, if you're talking about, say, new types of packaging, for example, it also creates other industries and products while solving problems or advancing the existing industries. I thank you.
Thank you, CEO. I think we've got one more contribution here. Just here.
Thank you, Mr. President. My name is Victoria Jakazi. I've been introduced before anyway. So I'm just taking up from especially what the CEO Sekai said. I know we've had these presentations before, linking universities or tertiary institutions with industry in order to create or to make use of the innovation hubs. And then after that, we went back and just did business as before. What I've observed, I think from the university side, yes, they do have the innovation hubs there. But when the students come for attachment, there is never really an interest from the professors as to where that child is going, what are they exposed to, what is the industry, what is it all about. I know we have one area where lab analysis is done, but it's just for them to do lab analysis and look at things around that and nothing further than that. Somewhere in finance, marketing, just doing what is supposed to be done there without much thought of how can we expand this knowledge or how can we put in more. So we would like to see more interest from universities rather than just a letter photocopied 55 times to introduce students and say take them for attachment. We need to see more even of the professors coming in to just take an interest. So, and that's also how the students will be hooked into innovating. That's one thing. Talking about us as industry, I think we also need to change the way we do things. We normally don't share information. We fear we may enrich our competitors and then they do better than us. We just don't. Everything is close to our chest. We play our cards close to our chests and don't share. We are actually in problems because look at the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. Are we going to be competitive going one company at a time? I think we also need to change the way we look at each other as well, collaborators rather than every time the next person is a competitor. We need to change the way we look at things and our attitudes. I was also thinking about innovating in the old products. I will give an example of our own product because, well, there's no competition anyway in Zimbabwe, which we have been exporting over the years. I mean, since the 19 or the 40s to early 50s. The market is disappearing. And now we are forced now to innovate and find alternative uses. We brought that to the attention of the Minister of Industry and Commerce. They are doing what they can to help with the research, and we are now being forced to do that research. So there are always opportunities for research, even in the old and also in the new. But what we need to do is we should dare to be vulnerable, even if someone knows what we are trying to do. That's how we can collaborate and work together to find solutions. Thank you, President.
Thank you, Mrs. Jagazi. I think we'll take two more, starting with the lady here.
Thank you very much. My name is Jennifer Makasishawa. I'm from Success Microfinance Bank. Mine was to provide an answer to the question that Pritchard posed as to the silo effect. The silo effect in Zimbabwe, unfortunately, is an illness that originates from home. The way we live as our children grow, they become leaders in society, and that silo effect is maintained. I'll explain why I'm saying that. Depending on resources and funds in the home, we create an oasis for ourselves, oblivious to the problems that the nation or our neighbors are encountering. You will find in a street, we will have 7 boreholes or 10 boreholes. If you've got your own solar panels and your alternative power source, then everything is okay. It's only a problem when the boreholes dry out. As we get older and advance in industry, we maintain that silo and selfish mentality, and I'll call it a silo sickness, in the ministries that we run, in the companies that we are running. Professor, you mentioned the strategies that the Japanese have adopted, and the Chinese have done that. And those strategies have taken 60 years, as you said, for the Japanese, 100 for the Chinese. And from what I've got one point of criticism to your presentation, which was fast tracking. And fast tracking is a concept that we appear to have always adopted in Zimbabwe, and we know what happens when we fast track certain processes. What is required, and I'd like to challenge the leaders of industry and our policy makers, is actually to come up with a clear national strategy for development. A clear national strategy that will insist on buy-in across all ministries and across political parties. It will transcend political leadership. That's the only way I think that we can get rid, to a certain extent, and obtain the financing that is required to fund this industrial transformation that we are talking about. I think the conversations that we're looking to align between education and industry can only be aligned if we have that clear strategy and national strategy in place. That way, industry can inform education as to what its requirements are. I'll just pose this question to you, Professor. We've had a lot of changes in the curriculum in our education in grade 7, Form 4 through ZIMSEC. How have these changes come about, and what are they reacting to? Has there been a dialogue with industry, with the economic sectors that has happened where we don't know that has informed these changes? Thank you.
Thank you. I think very interesting comments there. Honorable Bima, you want to comment on that one? All right. Thank you. I think we will take one more. The gentleman next the aisle there.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Dr. Charles Paradzai, the Director for Innovation at MSU, and I'm really glad that I am part of this Congress. It's my first Congress, so some of the discussions that have taken before I was not privy to. What I picked from the presentations, and which I would probably want to amplify, is the need maybe for a very concrete engagement between industry and universities via the innovation hubs. If I may ask the leaders here present, how many of your companies have extended a hand to the 6 universities to say, we are a company so and so, we've got this and that problem, and we want it to be solved. Maybe that has not happened. And also, it's also something that maybe the universities and hubs need to relook and say, how do we get a bridge between ourselves and industry? Because I think in other countries, you find that Mercedes-Benz or BMW, they'll have a lab within an innovation hub. And whenever they've got problems, they'll bring those problems to that particular lab in a particular innovation hub, and solutions will be developed from there. So I'm seeing a situation probably where, if I can pick on the Wattle company, that they may want to establish a lab within one of the universities, so one of the innovation hubs, and work directly with the scientists, the students, the innovators, so that we can actually create solutions together. And I also just wanted maybe to make a distinction between students who are on work-related learning and those that are innovators. Usually those who come for attachment or work-related learning come to get the exposure of what is it like in industry. And obviously we expect them maybe to show that they can actually think outside the box and even try and provide solutions. But they may not be ripe enough to offer you value for money because they're still in the process of being produced, if I can use that for lack of a better word. But when we now talk of the innovation hubs or the innovators, these are now the group of students or the group of staff members who have identified certain things that can be done better, certain things that can actually produce goods or services which are required in industry. And usually they try to research on the needs in industry and come up with a solution. I'm not saying that they are doing the perfect job. I think maybe this is why there's a clarion call to say, let's have these 2 areas actually closely working together to identify the problems that need to be solved. I think there was a comment from one of the ladies who's sitting in front of me who said that we need market analysts in our companies, which I think also translates to the same in the innovation hubs. If we do not have these market analysts within the innovation hubs, we'll still produce those solutions which I think have been referred to as being out of sync with reality. So I think we just need really to create a bridge so that we can always communicate with industry. And I would be happy if probably this Congress can actually give us that foundation for that bridge to be constructed so that the hub managers who are here present are always in sync with activities happening within the Congress. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that would be our last contribution. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for a very lively debate. I'm sure there will be a team that will work on Congress resolutions. As I was listening, a few appeared to be coming through. I think there was a call for submission of a menu of problems that industry is facing that may need solution in the innovation hubs. There was a call for a deliberate and structured approach to the collaboration between industry, academia, and the policymakers. There was a suggestion that companies could introduce innovation and technology board committees so that the issues of innovation are actually part of the main agenda of business. There was a call also not to ignore the old industries and look at innovations to improve the business in our old industries. I think the case in point of use of plastic bottles that has continued for years and years. There was a call also that maybe lecturers, when they are visiting companies to assess the work that their students are doing, they take a more interest in what actually happens in those companies, not just leave it to the students. And maybe this is when problems can be picked up that can be taken forward to the innovation hubs. We do agree, though, that I think maybe the more postgrad students that are working in the innovation hubs are more appropriate for working with the industry. There was an issue about the national strategy, that it has to have multi-stakeholder buy-in, that we need to look at fast-track programs that may not achieve our objectives. I think this may be continuing discussion through the course of this Congress. And then I think there was a call to establish labs by companies within the innovation hubs, particularly our large companies, the Tonga Julius, the Wattle Company, Delta, and a number of others, Dairy Board. They could actually have labs within the innovation hubs where they can interact more closely with the students to solve problems within their own companies. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I know this session is always a difficult one because we're going towards lunch, but I hope you all found it very interesting. Thank you.
So once again, ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause for our panel and their contribution. We do appreciate what you have provoked and what will hopefully be sustained as we go into the future. We have now reached lunchtime, ladies and gentlemen. My understanding is that there will be a tour of the facility that we have in the marquee next to ours, which will be headed by the Honourable Minister. So those who wish to participate and see what's in the stand and have a conversation at the same time before they have their lunch, please feel welcome to join the Honourable Minister because she will lead that delegation, is my understanding. And for those of us who prefer otherwise, then obviously the lunch will be served. I assume we all have tickets. Please feel free to use them and we will reconvene in the next hour, which I think, going by my time, would make it 20 minutes past 2. 20 minutes past 2. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Feeds is a manufacturer of stock feeds, and we have different types of feeds that we produce, ranging from poultry, which is your broiler, your layer, as well as your breeder feeds. And we're also doing pig feeds, cattle feeds, that is for your dairy and your beef. We also have dog food, and we are also doing horse feed, goat feed, and we also do pig feeds. So these are all done and produced at our plant in Willowvale, and they are distributed amongst our over 45 retail shops across the country. Our feed gets to the commercial farmers, to the medium scale, as well as the small scale. So the small scale are our backyard farmers. These are people doing birds or point of lay birds ranging from 25 and above, and we are providing their feed. We also go around to give a very strong technical support, whereby we go around training them and we visit them just to make sure that they are using the feeds correctly. So as a business, we have also now ventured into fertilizer manufacturing, and we've got a company called NutriMaster, which is doing all the fertilizers that are required. We also have vaccines. We also have agro equipment, or your poultry feeders and drinker lines, everything that you need. What we've tried to do over the years is that when one walks into a Profeeds shop, he is getting everything that he needs under one roof. To assure the quality of our products, we've got systems in place that will help us track the quality of our raw materials as well as our finished feed. So as raw materials are coming in, we take samples and we test in our lab using our NIR machine, and then as well as inline production checks, whereby we've got a team always checking on the production. So after they've done all the production, before any feed or any product goes out, again, it's taken to the lab just to check and to make sure that the quality is right. Our production system is automated, and this really helps in trying to eliminate human error, and also just to ensure that whatever we are doing is tracked and is on the systems. We use the SCADA system. It is a software, and that will help us just to track and to keep the records of what has been done. Just in case we want to follow up, we are able to do that, to follow up every batch.
This is our intake process, where we load our raw materials. You can see in these 4 bins is specifically for micro raw materials such as carcass meal, blood meal, corn gluten, and also limestone flour as well, and MCP. And then the other big storage bins here, that's for our major raw materials such as solvent, low fat, maize, wheat bran, and other raw materials. We've got a lot of raw materials there. So we normally load our major raw materials in those big storage bins. Then in terms of labor, on the loading of raw materials, on intake side, we only have 2 guys to load the raw materials, and we've got 6 guys on the bagging offline. And then operator, you only need 1 operator in this control room. As we are producing our feed, we monitor the quality of the product from the raw materials as we received the raw materials from the main gate to the raw materials storage site. And then we monitor the quality of the raw materials to the intake site throughout to the bagging off site. And then we do routine checks on our finished product. Hourly, we check the quality of the product as we run our feed.
For every feed that is produced, there's always a reference sample that is also kept in the lab, just in case there are complaints or we really need to go back to a certain day of production. This we do to make sure that every time a customer buys our feed, then we know that it is going to perform, especially when looking at the small scale, where sometimes management is not up to spec, but because we are providing them a high quality feed, then we know that the feed will perform and their broilers or layers will do very well.
As a quality department, we view ourselves as an integral part of the business. We always aim and try to achieve 100% in terms of our quality feeds. Quality is a habit, not an act. And the bitterness of poor quality remains after low pricing has been forgotten.